Sometimes the most powerful words aren't the ones spoken in boardrooms or penthouse offices. Sometimes they come from the most unexpected places, delivered by people we never thought to truly see. What happened in that gleaming corporate tower in Manhattan would change everything, not just for billionaire Marcus Wellington, but for everyone who witnessed what some are calling the most elegant revenge ever delivered. This is that story. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The 42nd floor of Wellington Financial Group's headquarters buzzed with the kind of controlled chaos that only billions of dollars in daily transactions could create. From his corner office, Marcus Wellington surveyed his empire through floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a commanding view of lower Manhattan. At 38, he had built one of the most successful investment firms on Wall Street, turning a modest inheritance into a fortune that placed him among America's youngest billionaires. The office itself was a testament to his success. Italian marble floors, a custom mahogany desk that had cost more than most people's annual salaries, and original paintings by Monet and Picasso adorning the walls. Everything was precisely arranged, from the crystal decanters filled with aged whiskey to the platinum-plated business awards that lined his credenza. This was Marcus's world, and in this world, he was king. "Mr. Wellington, the Tokyo markets are opening in 20 minutes, his assistant Jennifer called through the intercom, her voice carrying the crisp efficiency he demanded from all his employees. "The Yamamoto deal papers are on your desk for final review." Marcus barely acknowledged her words, his attention focused on the financial reports spread before him. The Yamamoto acquisition would be the largest in his company's history. A $12 billion merger with a Japanese technology conglomerate that would solidify his position as a major player in international finance. Everything had to be perfect. Every detail had to be flawless. He had a reputation to maintain, after all. Marcus Wellington didn't just succeed, he dominated. His competitors whispered about his ruthless negotiation tactics, his ability to spot weakness and exploit it without mercy. Business magazines featured him on their covers with headlines like, "The Wolf of Wall Street's Newest Predator," and how Marcus Wellington rewrote the rules of high finance. The lifestyle that came with such success was equally impressive. His penthouse apartment on the Upper East Side was featured in Architectural Digest. His collection of vintage sports cars was legendary among Manhattan's elite. He dated models and actresses, attended exclusive galas, and commanded respect wherever he went. People moved out of his way in restaurants. Hotel managers greeted him by name, and his mere presence could change the atmosphere of any room. But it wasn't just about the money, though there was certainly plenty of that. It was about power. The power to shape markets, to make decisions that affected thousands of jobs, to command instant obedience from anyone in his employ. Marcus had cultivated this power carefully over the years, understanding that in his world, perception was often more important than reality. People needed to see him as untouchable, unreachable, almost mythical in his success. His daily routine reflected this carefully constructed image. He arrived at the office before sunrise, already having reviewed overnight market reports during his 30-minute workout in his private gym. His personal chef prepared breakfast to exact specifications: egg whites, organic vegetables, and imported coffee that cost more per pound than most people spent on groceries in a week. His wardrobe consisted entirely of custom-tailored suits from Savile Row, each costing more than the average American's monthly salary. The building itself was another extension of his persona. Wellington Financial Group occupied the top 15 floors of a gleaming glass tower in the financial district, its lobby adorned with modern art and staffed by impeccably dressed security personnel who knew to greet certain visitors with just the right mixture of deference and professionalism. The elevators required key cards for access to the upper floors, creating a clear hierarchy that everyone understood instinctively. Marcus's employees respected him, but they also feared him. His standards were impossibly high, his tolerance for mistakes virtually non-existent. He had fired senior executives for minor errors, terminated partnerships over perceived slights, and was known to dress down subordinates in meetings that left grown men questioning their career choices. It wasn't personal, he told himself. It was simply business. Excellence demanded sacrifice, and he was willing to demand that sacrifice from everyone around him. The morning of what would become known as the incident began like any other. Marcus arrived at 5:30 a.m., his driver having navigated the pre-dawn streets of Manhattan with practiced precision. The building's lobby was still quiet, occupied only by security guards and the overnight cleaning crew finishing their work. He strode past them without acknowledgement. These people were part of the infrastructure, as invisible and unremarkable as the marble floors they maintained. His executive assistant had already prepared his schedule for the day: a breakfast meeting with investors from Dubai, a conference call with the London office, lunch with a senator who was considering certain financial regulations, and the afternoon dedicated to finalizing the Yamamoto deal. It was a typical day in the life of Marcus Wellington, filled with the kind of high-stakes decisions that could affect global markets. As he settled into his leather chair and activated his multiple computer monitors, Marcus felt the familiar surge of satisfaction that came with surveying his domain. Through his windows, he could see other office buildings beginning to show signs of life as Manhattan prepared for another day of commerce. Soon, his trading floor would be alive with activity. His analysts would be generating reports that could move millions of dollars with a single recommendation, and his name would once again be whispered in boardrooms around the world. This was his reality, a world where he controlled every variable, where his word was law, and where his position at the top of the financial food chain seemed as permanent as the marble foundations of his building. He had built this empire through intelligence, ruthlessness, and an unwavering belief in his own superiority. Every person in his employ existed to serve his vision, and every decision made on his 42nd floor rippled outward to affect markets, companies, and lives around the globe. Marcus Wellington was, by every measure that mattered to him, untouchable. He lived in a realm where money translated directly to power, where his every whim could be satisfied instantly, and where the complexities of ordinary human interaction were filtered through layers of assistants, advisors, and sycophants, who told him exactly what he wanted to hear. It was a perfect life, precisely calibrated to his specifications, and like all perfect constructions, it was about to face a test that would reveal just how fragile perfection could be when confronted with something money couldn't buy, power couldn't command, and reputation couldn't protect against simple human truth delivered by someone he had never bothered to truly see. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The morning sun cast long shadows across the trading floor as Marcus reviewed the final documents for the Yamamoto merger. Numbers danced across his multiple screens: stock prices, currency fluctuations, market projections that would determine the fate of thousands of employees across 2 continents. He was in his element, manipulating figures that represented more money than entire countries possessed. His concentration was broken by raised voices emanating from the reception area outside his office. Through the glass walls that separated his domain from the rest of the floor, he could see his head of security, James Morrison, engaged in what appeared to be a heated discussion with someone just out of view. Marcus frowned. Disruptions were not tolerated on his floor, especially not during crucial business hours. He pressed the intercom button with more force than necessary. "Jennifer, what's happening out there? I can hear shouting." "I'm sorry, Mr. Wellington. There seems to be some kind of misunderstanding with one of the cleaning staff. Mr. Morrison is handling it." Cleaning staff. Marcus's jaw tightened. The building's cleaning crew was supposed to finish their work before the business day began. Their presence during operational hours was a breach of protocol that someone would answer for. He stood from his desk, straightening his tie with sharp, precise movements. "Have Morrison escort them out immediately. I don't want to hear another word." But as he moved toward his office door, the voices grew louder and he caught fragments of conversation that made him pause. Someone was speaking in rapid Spanish, their tone increasingly agitated. Morrison's responses were growing more aggressive, his voice carrying the kind of authority that Marcus paid him handsomely to project. Against his better judgment, Marcus opened his office door and stepped into the reception area. What he saw there would later replay in his mind countless times. A small woman, probably in her 50s, wearing the navy blue uniform of the building's cleaning service. She was holding a mop bucket in one hand and gesturing animatedly with the other, her face flushed with obvious frustration. Morrison, a former police officer whose imposing frame had intimidated countless trespassers and unwanted visitors, towered over her with his arms crossed. His expression carried the kind of cold dismissal that Marcus had seen him use on protesters, journalists, and anyone else deemed unworthy of accessing the upper floors. I don't care what your excuse is, Morrison was saying, his voice carrying across the polished marble floor. You people need to learn to follow schedules. Mr. Wellington doesn't pay to have his business day interrupted by your incompetence. The woman responded in rapid Spanish, her words flowing with passionate intensity. Marcus didn't understand the language, but the emotion behind it was unmistakable. This wasn't just frustration, it was righteous anger. Speak English, Morrison snapped, his patience clearly exhausted. This is America. If you can't communicate properly, maybe you shouldn't be working here. The woman's response came in accented, but perfectly clear English, each word carefully pronounced. I was explaining that the elevator was broken on floors 30 through 35, which delayed our schedule by 2 hours. But I don't think you're interested in explanations, are you? Marcus found himself studying her more carefully. She was probably no more than 5 feet tall, with graying hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, and hands that showed the wear of manual labor. Her uniform was spotless despite her work, and she carried herself with a dignity that seemed incongruous with Morrison's treatment of her. What I'm interested in, Morrison replied, stepping closer in what was clearly meant to be an intimidating gesture, is you people doing your jobs without disrupting important business. Mr. Wellington runs a multi-billion-dollar operation here, not a charity for people who can't manage simple schedules. It was then that the woman said something in Spanish under her breath, her voice quiet but unmistakably sharp. Whatever she said caused her to glance briefly in Marcus's direction, and for a moment, their eyes met. There was no deference in her gaze, no automatic submission that he was accustomed to seeing from service staff. Instead, there was something that looked almost like assessment. Morrison caught the Spanish words as well, and his face darkened. What did you just say? What did you call me? The woman straightened her shoulders, meeting his gaze directly. I was simply making an observation about the situation. In Spanish, which none of us understand, that's disrespectful and unprofessional. Marcus felt a familiar surge of irritation at the entire scene. This was exactly the kind of disruption that he paid Morrison to prevent. Time was money, and this petty drama was costing him both. The Yamamoto representatives would be calling in less than an hour, and he needed absolute focus for negotiations that could affect his company's future. But something about the exchange nagged at him. The way the woman had looked at him, the careful neutrality of her responses to Morrison's increasingly aggressive questioning, and, most intriguingly, whatever she had said in Spanish that had triggered Morrison's anger. Other employees had begun to notice the commotion. Junior analysts pretended to focus on their screens while stealing glances at the unusual scene. Administrative assistants whispered among themselves, and Marcus could see the story already spreading through the office grapevine. This was becoming exactly the kind of spectacle that he despised, a public display that undermined the smooth professional atmosphere he had worked so hard to cultivate. Morrison, he called out, his voice carrying the kind of authority that immediately commanded attention. What seems to be the problem here? Both Morrison and the cleaning woman turned toward him, but their reactions couldn't have been more different. Morrison's face immediately shifted into the deferential expression of an employee addressing his superior, while the woman's expression remained unchanged, polite but not subservient, attentive but not intimidated. Mr. Wellington, I apologize for the disruption, Morrison began, his tone immediately more respectful. This cleaning woman was here during business hours, which violates building protocols. When I explained this to her, she became argumentative and started speaking in Spanish, making comments I couldn't understand. Marcus looked at the woman, who was listening to Morrison's explanation with what appeared to be careful attention. When Morrison finished, she remained silent, waiting to see if she would be asked for her perspective. It was a small thing, but it suggested a level of self-control that Marcus found unexpectedly impressive. And your explanation? He asked her directly. The service elevator malfunctioned early this morning, sir. The repair took longer than expected, which put our entire schedule behind. I was finishing the last of the floors assigned to me when your security officer approached. Her English was clear and precise, with only the faintest trace of an accent. I apologize for any inconvenience. And the Spanish comments? A flicker of something, amusement, defiance, crossed her features before she answered. I was commenting on the situation, sir. Nothing that would be appropriate to translate in a professional setting. Morrison's face flushed red. See? She admits it. She was being disrespectful in a language she assumed we couldn't understand. It's completely unprofessional. Marcus found himself studying the woman's face more intently. There was something in her expression, a kind of quiet intelligence that suggested her comment had been far more sophisticated than Morrison realized. But more than that, there was a composure in how she handled the confrontation that spoke to experience dealing with situations like this. "I want to know exactly what she said," Marcus declared, his voice cutting through the tension in the reception area. It wasn't really about the words themselves. It was about control, about ensuring that nothing happened in his domain without his complete understanding. The woman met his gaze steadily. "I don't think that would be appropriate, sir." "I didn't ask what you thought was appropriate," Marcus replied, his tone sharpening. "I asked what you said. I'm ordering you to translate it." The reception area fell completely silent. Even the ambient sounds of the trading floor seemed to fade, as everyone within hearing distance focused on the unexpected confrontation between the billionaire and the cleaning woman. Morrison stepped back slightly, sensing that something important was about to happen, but not quite understanding what. The woman looked at Marcus for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then, very quietly, she smiled. The silence stretched between them like a taut wire, every person in the reception area holding their breath. Marcus Wellington, accustomed to immediate compliance with his every demand, felt the unfamiliar sensation of being studied rather than obeyed. The cleaning woman's smile wasn't mocking or defiant. It was something far more unsettling. It was knowing. "You really want to know what I said?" she asked quietly, her voice carrying a weight that made several nearby employees unconsciously lean forward. "I don't repeat myself," Marcus replied, his tone ice-cold. "Translate it. Now." The woman set down her mop bucket with deliberate care, straightening to her full height, which, while modest, somehow seemed to command the entire room's attention. When she spoke, her voice was clear and steady, carrying easily across the marble floor. "I said, how sad that a man with so much money has so little respect for the people who make his world possible." She paused, letting the words settle. "But that was before you joined the conversation, Mr. Wellington. What I said when I saw you was different." Marcus felt heat rise in his chest. The first comment was bad enough. A clear insult to his character delivered where his employees could witness it. But there was more? "And what exactly did you say when you saw me?" "I said, there stands a man who has forgotten that his mother once cleaned houses to pay for his education." The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. Around the reception area, he could see the shock on his employees' faces, the way Morrison's mouth fell open, the sudden stillness that indicated everyone was processing what they'd just heard. But it wasn't just the audacity of the statement, it was the impossible accuracy of it. His mother, Sarah Wellington, had indeed worked as a housekeeper when Marcus was young. After his father's early death, she had taken whatever work she could find to keep food on the table and save money for his college fund. She had cleaned the homes of wealthy families in Connecticut, enduring their condescension and casual cruelty, all so that her son could have opportunities she'd never dreamed of. Marcus had spent decades burying that part of his history, crafting a narrative of self-made success that conveniently omitted the sacrifices his mother had made. His official biography mentioned his humble beginnings only in passing, focusing instead on his academic achievements and business acumen. He had worked tirelessly to distance himself from those early years, when his mother would come home exhausted, her hands raw from chemicals, and her dignity bruised by employers who treated her as invisible. "How do you know that?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The woman's expression softened slightly. "Because, Mr. Wellington, I worked alongside your mother for 3 years at the Morrison estate in Greenwich." She gestured toward the security officer. "No relation to your Mr. Morrison here, of course. Different family entirely. Your mother used to talk about her brilliant son who was going to change the world. She was so proud of you." Marcus felt the floor shift beneath his feet. Morrison Estate. He remembered that name from his childhood. His mother had worked there when he was in high school, often staying late for special events. She would come home with stories about the family's wealth, their casual waste, their assumption that people like her existed solely for their convenience. "Sarah was the hardest worker I ever knew," the woman continued, her voice carrying a warmth that seemed to fill the suddenly quiet reception area. "She would take extra shifts, work weekends, anything to save money for your college fund. She used to carry your report cards in her purse and show them to anyone who would listen. My Marcus is going to be somebody important someday, she would say. The memories came flooding back. His mother's calloused hands, as she helped him with homework after her long shifts, the way she would practice pronouncing college terminology so she could better understand his ambitions, her fierce pride when he received his acceptance letter to Harvard Business School. She had given him everything, including her dignity, so that he could build the life he now lived. I remember her funeral, the woman said quietly, 5 years ago. It was a beautiful service. You spoke about her strength, her sacrifice, her unwavering belief in you. You promised that you would honor her memory by never forgetting where you came from. Marcus closed his eyes, feeling the weight of that promise. After the funeral, he had returned to his penthouse, poured himself an expensive whiskey, and made a vow to never let his mother's sacrifices be in vain. But somewhere along the way, that vow had transformed into something else entirely, a determination to rise so far above his origins that no one would ever connect him to that poor boy whose mother cleaned other people's toilets. My name is Elena Rodriguez, the woman said, extending her hand in a gesture that somehow managed to be both formal and warm. I knew your mother as a colleague and a friend. She would have been proud of your business success, Mr. Wellington, but I think she would have been disappointed by how you treat people like us. The handshake was firm, her skin rough from years of manual labor, just like his mother's had been. Marcus found himself unable to speak, overwhelmed by the collision of his carefully constructed present with his deliberately forgotten past. Ilnina worked here for 12 years, Morrison said suddenly, his voice uncertain. She's actually the head of the night cleaning crew. I didn't realize. That she was a human being with her own story? Marcus asked, his voice hollow. He looked around the reception area, seeing his employees' faces with new clarity. They weren't just looking at him with surprise anymore. There was something else in their expressions. Understanding, perhaps. Or maybe disappointment. Elena picked up her mop bucket, preparing to leave. I should finish my work. The day shift will be arriving soon. Wait, Marcus said, the word coming out more forcefully than he intended. Please, wait. She turned back, her expression patient but not expectant. She wasn't waiting for an apology or an explanation. She was simply giving him space to speak if he chose to. My mother, Marcus began, then stopped, struggling to find words that had been buried under decades of success and self-reinvention. She used to tell me that character isn't what you achieve when everyone is watching. It's how you treat people when you think no one will remember. Elena nodded slowly. Sarah was a wise woman. I forgot that, Marcus admitted, his voice barely audible. I forgot a lot of things. Over the following weeks, changes began to ripple through Wellington Financial Group. Marcus established a scholarship program for the children of service workers, funded by his personal fortune rather than company accounts. He implemented new policies ensuring fair wages and respectful treatment for all building staff, regardless of their position in the corporate hierarchy. But the most significant change was in Marcus himself. He began arriving at work earlier, not to gain more hours for deal-making, but to greet the cleaning crew as they finished their shifts. He learned their names, their stories, their dreams for their families. Elena became an unexpected advisor, helping him understand how his company's policies affected the people who made his success possible. The Yamamoto deal still closed successfully, adding billions to his company's value. But Marcus found himself measuring success differently now. The Wall Street Journal still featured him on their covers, but the headlines had evolved. Wellington's revolutionary labor policies set new standard, and how one billionaire learned to remember his roots. 6 months after their encounter, Marcus stood in the same reception area where Elena had delivered her perfect revenge. She was there again, but this time as an invited guest at the company's annual charity gala, held to raise money for educational opportunities for immigrant families. Your mother would be proud, Elena said, adjusting the elegant dress that Marcus had insisted the company provide for all honored guests. I hope so, Marcus replied. I'm finally trying to become the man she raised me to be. Elena smiled, the same knowing smile she had worn that morning months ago, but now filled with warmth instead of judgment. She always knew you would find your way back to her lessons. Sarah had faith in you, even when you lost faith in yourself. As Marcus looked around the room filled with his employees, their families, and the service workers who kept his empire running, he realized that Elena's revenge had been perfect, not because it had torn him down, but because it had built him back up into someone worthy of his mother's sacrifices. Sometimes the most powerful words aren't spoken in boardrooms or penthouse offices. Sometimes they come from people we've learned to see as invisible, carrying truths we've forgotten in our climb toward success. And sometimes, when we're brave enough to listen, those words can transform us into the people we always had the potential to become. The boy whose mother cleaned houses had finally learned to honor her memory, not by forgetting where he came from, but by never again forgetting the dignity and worth of every person who helped make his world possible. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hits the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.